Hi, this is Michael today reporting from an article that's in the LA Times written by Steve Lopez. It says the court needs alternatives in handling the mentally ill. It says airport court sees many defendants with addiction and mental illness, highlighting a shortage of sensible alternatives to jail. It goes on to say by Steve Lopez, again this is October the 5th of 2013, it says, if you were to spend much time at the airport courthouse, a branch of the Los Angeles County Superior Court located just south of LAX, you would begin to notice lots of yellow and blue, as in yellow shirts and blue pants. The outfits worn by Los Angeles County jail inmates who have been diagnosed with mental illness. They stride into the court in handcuffs for arraignments or other legal matters, then in many cases shuffle back into holding cells and await transportation back downtown to overcrowded jails. Ellie Schneier, and that's spelled S-C-H-N-E-I-R, a deputy public defender for 28 years, said new court personnel are often surprised by the armies of disturbed defendants who come marching through on a daily basis. I would bet the airport court has more mentally ill. Let me repeat that one more time. I would bet the airport court has more mentally ill people than anywhere else, said Schneier, who spends her days handling arraignments before Superior Court Judge Keith Schwartz. Why so many sick people? Because Santa Monica and Venice have long been gathering places for this population. And then there's the West Los Angeles VA, which draws lots of adult veterans to the west side. And because there's a shameful shortage of sensible, humane, cost-effective services that would divert people in recovery rather than into jail. My biggest gripe with the system is, why are we spending $50,000 a year to jail somebody when we could be spending $5,000 or whatever it is to put them in treatment programs? Said Lynn Meltzer Brewer, a deputy public defender. Part of the problem, Schneier said, is that mental illness is routinely criminalized. A psychotic defendant might get picked up by police for an outburst, then make a threat or kick the window of a police cruiser and get charged with felonies that result in being locked up when the obvious need is treatment rather than punishment. I have a reputation as being very tough on sentencing violent stuff, but I'm practical, Schwartz said. I've been in this court now for 7 or 8 years, and I've seen what we need to do. We need to help the sheriff with overcrowding, and we need to help the prisons. With non-violent, non-serious people, we can help. We need to divert them from being in jail to being in a program that can change their behavior. But such programs are hard to come by, Schwartz said, especially when the defendant has both an addiction and mental health issues, which tends to be the norm, given the proclivity for people with mental illness to self-medicate. Schwartz does what he can, though with the cooperation of the prosecution and the defense, and he's particularly determined to give veterans a second chance. That was the case with a U.S. Army veteran who entered Schwartz's courtroom in handcuffs 2 weeks ago, looking at the possibility of a 32 months incarceration for stealing $10.35 from a coffee shop tip jar. Again, he stole $10.35 from a coffee shop tip jar, and he was going to be incarcerated to serve 32 months, which is not something that sounds quite right to me. And again, if you were a perfect person, you would be equivalent mentally, physically, and in the activity and in the price range, as well as the psychological I screw this way, I speak this way, as the ones who are doing the handouts, such as Mr. Schwartz or Schneier, because the world is full of diversity, and that's what freedom is about. That is not in the article, but that again is what psychiatry tries to make a lot of money of doing a lot of unnecessary things. Putting someone in jail, even if it's for a criminal charge, minimally helps them. However, it does tend to keep society safe if they are a person who would cause physical or harm to one's property or self. Nonetheless, I will continue to read. The man had a 2003 robbery on his record, but it was a relatively minor offense, a purse snatching. He also had a probation violation and did prison time, so his latest crime could be definitely have landed him behind bars. But from the bench, Schwartz told the man that he was going to instead send him to a one-year residential treatment program for people with an addiction and mental health disorder. I'm not sending you to prison. I'm putting you in a program to try to get to some of the underlying issues addressed, Schwartz said. I'm giving you a break so you can give a brother like me a break and try to stay out of trouble. In chambers a few minutes later, Schwartz explained his decision. I'm very mindful of the prison overcrowding the state faces, and it's under court order to release 9,600 prisoners, he said. We don't need to send someone who took $10.35 from a tip jar to prison for 32 months. The state doesn't need the headache. And as for the defendant, he said he'll be off the streets and he'll get stabilized and he'll be able to properly comport himself. More than a week later, the tip jar thief was still in jail awaiting the completion of paperwork being handled by a private court liaison who told me that there are often complications and beds seem to be hardest to come by for those who need them the most. It doesn't help either that the County Department of Mental Health used to have full-time staffers in court but scaled back to a part-time operation. Carrie Golub, G-O-L-U-B, another deputy public defender, works in the Airport Court's Drug Court and Santa Monica Homeless Court, both of which have far more alternative sentencing options, which should help, but Golub said addiction rehab programs often reject clients who say they are too mentally ill, and yet the same clients are sometimes judged not sick enough to be conserved or hospitalized. So they end up doing circles between the streets, the jails, and the court. And I would ask you to pause for a second, because America is based on a financial system. That financial system has to do with a credit rating. If that credit rating gets messed up, that means that person cannot block himself from any temptation that society may bring to him. That person cannot block the necessity to buy things that are of great value, which mean mortgage or apartment down payment or privacy in the choice. And once you start stealing people's choice, whether you're a cop or a robber or a mental health professional or whatever it is that you are, when you steal someone's choice, that is one of the greatest spiritual and legal things that can happen to a person. That needs to be addressed in this particular arena of thought. A person has a body, they have one life, they have one choice, and if you are within knowledge of the Buddhist chakra system, your choice is in number 5, which lies in your throat. I choose to speak these words. I choose not to have your hands put on me. I choose to walk the beach. I choose to go walking out at 2 a.m. I choose to go to work every day because I want the American value dream. The American system is not the same as a tribal system, which is what America is founded upon. America is overpopulated with condominiums that block her oceans. America is overpopulated with condominiums that take so much time from mother and father that they barely get to see the offspring that they have. Think about those things as you start calling people mentally unhealthy, and as you start climbing the hierarchy of judge this and psychology, PhD this. They spend a lot of nerdy years studying things that Sigmund Freud or lots of people who diagnosed once upon a time, they were diagnosing cocaine to mental health patients, and it was accepted. And that's not an exaggeration, that's the truth. The next, going forward with this article, since someone is so audacious that they're going to say you're mentally healthy and you're not, really what they're saying is you're not fit to be around me, and it's the whole, I went to school for this long, so therefore I deserve these privileges. And you have to, when you see it for that, then you see the truth. I toss salt. Let's see. Where are we? Carrie Golub, another deputy public defender, works in the airport court's drug court at and Santa Monica homeless court. There are two different courts. There's one type of citizen, and that's a U.S. citizen, or it's a non-citizen. However, we have a homeless court, and we have a different court, both of which have far more alternative sentencing options, which should help. But Golub said addiction rehab programs often reject clients who they say are too mentally ill, and yet those same clients are sometimes judged not sick enough to be conserved or hospitalized. So they end up going in circles between the streets and the jails and the court. It's not okay, Golub said a system that serves some but fails many others. They sit in their own feces and they're bug infested. They have vermin running all over them, and they lay there in the streets in this condition. I haven't seen this. I think that Mr. or Mrs. Golub is going to one or two people, and he's not seeing all the people that I'm seeing, because most people have common sense of that's dirty and I don't want anything to do with it, and most people won't even eat something that doesn't appear edible unless they're absolutely starving. And the United States is full of charitable organizations which feed, as did the Cherokee, the Native American people, the Navajo. They feed, and the sun is the one who brings down that light into the soil. And if each person was allotted enough space to raise their own children and grow their own crops, instead of raising a condominium times 3 and 3 gas-guzzling cars that cause war in the Middle East because gas is a natural resource, the world might look a little bit different to you. Let's see. Los Angeles County jails have more than 3,200 inmates with mental illness, a number that could be halved with a greater investment in supportive housing and community treatment. And yet the county has millions in unspent rehab money. It's leasing 500 jail beds in another county, and it's planning to build a $1 billion jail designed for an unexpected increase in the number of mentally ill inmates. County supervisors will soon be making some big decisions related to the realignment funding from the state, incarceration, and diversion. They would do well beforehand to visit airport court. Again, a lot of times it's just family support. Wives often have this idea of what marriage is supposed to be, and when she realizes that she married the wrong man because she's pregnant, and then they break up, the mental illness resorts in she and he and in the offspring. A lot of times Americans think that they are supposed to be monogamous because the Bible tells us so. The Bible also tells us that the Savior was born to a virgin, which means that a woman never had sex with a man, but that child can save the whole world, and he's from the Middle East. We're in North America. These things can be taken into account as you look at our dollar, and it says, "In God we trust, not in good way trust." This is Michael signing off, reading you an article from the LA Times dated October the 5th of 2013, and it's titled "Court Needs Alternatives in Handling the Mentally Ill." Whatever your diagnosis is, I can give you one from a psychiatric book if you talk to me for just a few minutes, and you won't have to act for it, because everyone has a diagnosis of how they react, interact, the words they choose, the excitement level that comes upon them when they experience a shock or the lack thereof, or how many different people have influenced them, and maybe they speak like their mother when they're angry and they speak like their father when they're scared. Or, borderline means I'm so close to my sister that we share the same bar of soap, so therefore anything that happens to she should also not happen to me. It's really confusing, and a lot of these drugs that they give you, the patient sits there and turns into a giant blob of crap that just sits and eats and gains weight and gains weight and gains weight, and they take up a lot of space. But really it takes you reaching out and saying, you're not that much different than me, and if you are, you got some type of wheels turning in your head that won't allow you to expand your mind and look at the height of the tree and say, wow, this tree's really high. I wonder what's in the branches. I wonder how many branches are there. What types of birds are in it? Why did the bird choose there and not South America? Why did the bird choose there and not Australia? And where does money come from? Is it a plant, or is it something that come down from the heavens and landed in his lap? Why does he have it, and why do I do not? Those kind of questions will help you philosophically, psychologically, and help you diagnose the writers, such as the writer who wrote this LA Times article, whose name is Steve Lopez, in your LA Times October 5th, 2013, titled, "Court Needs Alternatives in Handling the Mentally Ill. To he who have no sin cast the first stone." Oh, you thought my hand was ready to cast a stone. Oh, but it's not. Have a good day. This is Michael signing off. Bye-bye.